I'm just going to start off with
Yes.
showing you what it looks like once you're in a meeting. And after I explain more about the in meeting, I will go back to actually joining meetings and things like that, but I'm going to start off with in the meeting. So imagine that this is like us. I would be the main person. This is just a screenshot off the internet, but imagine that this is our meeting. And first, I will start off by showing you how to actually mute yourself. So muting is very important just so that you don't have any background noise. So the only thing that you have to do in order to mute yourself is click on the microphone in the bottom left-hand corner. And you simply click on that and there'll be a giant X across it and it'll show that it is muted. The next thing is stop video. So if you don't want anybody to be able to see you through your webcam, you just simply have to click on stop video and that as well will stop your video. So the next thing is the security tab, which is very good for making sure that your meeting is secure and that you're having a private conversation with somebody. So firstly, all you have to do is click on the security icon in the bottom bar here, and a few different options come up. So there's lock meeting, enable waiting room, all participants to allow participants to share screen, chat, rename themselves, annotate, and on shared content, and then also remove participant. So this security window is very helpful to making sure that only the people that you want in the meeting are able to join. So enabling the waiting room simply means that all people trying to join your meeting will be placed in a room, as many of you have experienced, called the waiting room. And in order to actually get into the meeting, the host will have to allow you to join. So it only allows you, the host, or whoever the host is, to allow the people to come in, and they get to select who they would like to come in. So if you see that some random person's trying to get in, you wouldn't let them in and they wouldn't be able to get into your call. As well, it's great because you can allow participants to do different things based on the type of meeting you're having. So if you don't want people to be able to share their screen, you can turn that off. You can also turn off the chat if you feel that it's too much of a distraction. You can also allow people to rename themselves if they, which isn't as big of a deal, but if you don't want them for some reason to rename themselves, then you can always turn that off as well. And then annotating on shared content basically means that the person is able to draw on a shared screen. If you're trying to say label something or draw a diagram together, then everybody's able to participate. Next is the participants button. And this is helpful because in this area, you are able to rename yourself. If you're the host, you're able to mute and unmute people. And you're also allowed to see an entire list of people who are in the meeting. You can turn people's microphones on and off, which is good if there's noise. You can also have these different prompts, as many of you know about, is the yes and no, as well as go slower and go faster. So those are really helpful for communicating with the audience during a presentation or a meeting when you're not actively looking at the chat or you're focusing on something else. So you're able to see them through those prompts. And then also, if you're looking at the participant section, you're able to invite people. And there's two forms of inviting people to a Zoom call, which is the emailing, which allows you to email a pre-made message to people of your choice. So Zoom actually makes you an email with the link and the information to get into the meeting, and you simply have to type in an email address or a contact in order to actually get it to somebody you want to join. So this is good because you can simply, whenever you want, start a new meeting, and then if you're like, oh, I want to add people to it and they want to join, then you can just send them the link, which is really helpful. As well, there's the share screen option, which is this big green button at the bottom bar. And this is how I'm actually sharing my screen with you. So it allows the participants to see whatever you're seeing, a selected screen. So you can either share your whole window, you can share you can share just one image, you can really share whatever you would like. And once you click on the share screen button, then all of the options come up, and then you can just select one of them. As well, you can even attach your mobile device to your desktop or your computer, and you can share your screen of your phone onto your computer. So that's also really helpful. And then the next section is the chat section, which is great because it allows you to communicate with others during the meeting. And as many of you may have experienced, there's an option to chat to everybody. As well, there's an option to chat privately based on which meeting you're in. And sometimes the chat is turned off, so you're not able to communicate. But for instance, in this meeting, you are able to chat to other people. And you just have to select who you want to chat to, type in a message into the little text box, and then you click enter to send it. So it's a great way to non-verbally communicate with other people. As well, there is a recording section, which is really helpful for instances similar to this one, where we want to be able to share this video with other people afterwards, or we want to make sure that we have a copy of the information. And therefore, by recording the meeting, we're able to do that. And it's pretty simple. All you have to do is click on the record button at the bottom, and it will simply start recording. And then you can choose if it records your sound as well, which will be helpful, for instance, when somebody's presenting. And then afterwards, it will share to, depending on where you send it to, it'll share to a certain place on your computer. So it might share to your downloads, it might share just to your desktop, or it might share to your files, depending on where you want it to go. And you can also even access recorded Zoom meetings in the Zoom Launchpad, which I'll show you afterwards as well. There's also reactions, which allow you to either do things such as thumbs up, a smiley face, clapping, and it's just another nonverbal reaction that you can do as you respond to a speaker or somebody talking. So that's also something cool that you can do and play around with. And then I also wanted to mention that there are a few different views that you can have on Zoom. If you look to the right top-hand corner of this screenshot, where it says Gallery View means that it is in the grid, which is where most of you may be seeing the meeting at the beginning, where you can see all of the tiny squares all lined up in the different pages. So there's that view, which is Gallery View. And then there's also Speaker View, which is this view that you're seeing right now. And it's when the speaker is the main person that you can see, just so that it's highlighting who's talking and you can focus all of your attention to them. So you can select what view you're on, as well as select if it takes up your whole screen or a smaller amount of your screen, just by simply maximizing and minimizing with these two outward arrows here. But you can just choose how you'd like to see the speaker and others in the call. So an example of how you might use this is if you're on a social call with your friends or your family, you may want to put it in grid view so that you can see everybody. But if you're, say, in a class or you want to focus only on the speaker, you can put it on speaker view so that you're just focusing on them. Now I will move on to a different kind of portion of Zoom. So this is basically what you see when you first go into Zoom and you're logged in. So in this screenshot, it says back to meeting in this orange part rather than new meeting or join meeting, because I'm already in a meeting and I can't join another one. But just imagine that this would say new meeting here. And by clicking on this, you create a brand new Zoom meeting with just yourself in it. And as I was explaining before, you would then share the link with another person in order to have others join. So that's one way of getting on Zoom, is to just start a new meeting and then share the link with somebody once you're already in the meeting. As well, you can join a meeting, which you would do by clicking this button here that says join. And from there, you would have to type in the ID that you were sent from the person who organized it, and you just have to type in the ID and the password. As well, another way of joining a Zoom is by a link. So say if somebody emails you a link, you would just have to click on that and you'd be able to join. As well, there is an option to schedule meetings. You can see with this little calendar here. And once you click on that, you'll be able to see many different options for scheduling a meeting, which I'll go into more depth in later on. And then here you can also see any of your upcoming meetings. So it says no upcoming meetings today because I don't have any scheduled, but if I did, I would be able to easily access them from this page here. So here is a screenshot of what it looks like when you click on schedule a meeting, as I showed in the previous screenshot. And here is basically where you put in all of the information about your meeting. So firstly, I would just talk about what the topic is. I could explain it in a short sentence or a few words. The default is just my name and then a Zoom meeting, just because it wants to have some information about it, but it's not specified because I haven't made it specified yet. Then I can choose the date and the time to let people know when it will be, and also so it goes into your schedule. And you can also choose if it's a recurring meeting, because then it'll recur a certain amount of times based on what you choose. So then you don't have to create new ones every single time. Then the meeting ID, you can choose to have it generate automatically, which means that it's a different ID and a different range of arrangement of numbers each time, and they're kind of random symbols and numbers each time. Or you can use your own personal meeting ID, which each of us have associated with our Zoom accounts, and it shows what mine is there. It says 517-030-8690. So you can use yours, or you can use a random generated one. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. And then there's also a password. So if you want it to require a meeting password, you can create one there, or you don't have to have one if you feel that it's too complicated or it's not necessary. But if you do want to have one for extra security, you can always just create one there and then let the people know who are joining what the password is. Then there's a few different video settings. So when you first join the meeting, the host video will either be on or off, and the participants video will also either be on or off. So you can choose whether they're automatically off, which I feel is much better, because some people are kind of surprised when they turn on Zoom and their face is just suddenly there. They'd rather have control over when they're ready to turn their cameras on. So it's good to have that turned off. Also know that you can always turn it on whenever you're in the meeting. So it's not fully off, it's just off when they join. Then there's also the option for calendar, which basically just inserts the Zoom meeting into your calendar. So if you want to use iCal, you can just select that, or you can use Google Calendar or Outlook or other calendars. So you can just choose which one you want the meeting to go into, and based on your calendar settings, it will actually most likely send you a reminder. So it's helpful to keep track of all of your events and all of your upcoming meetings. And then you simply have to click schedule in order to actually schedule the meeting. You might have seen in the screenshots, this is the bottom bar that you see on your Zoom. And so the first button that I was talking about was the mute button. And then there's a few different options as well. So you can click on that to mute or unmute. But then if you click on the small drop-down arrow, there's a few more options. So first there's under select a microphone, there's which microphone you want to use. So you can use the one that is the same as the system, or if you want to change it, you could change it to, for Lorianne, the MacBook Pro microphone. Then there's also a speaker option to select, and you can either use the speaker that's the same as the system or the MacBook Pro speakers. And then there's also the option below that to test speaker and microphone. You can also switch to phone audio if that's going to work better for you. For example, if you're not able to hear people or you want it to be clearer, then you can always switch to phone audio. And then you can also leave computer audio. And then from there, you can also go into the actual audio settings of Zoom. And there's different categories in the settings, and that would just lead you to the audio settings part of the Zoom settings. And then the next button is the video button. So when you click on it, you would stop or start your video. And then there's also another small drop-down arrow for selecting a camera. And for Lorianne, she selected the FaceTime HD camera. But if you have more options, then they'll show up there. And then there's also the option to choose a virtual background as well as choose a video filter. So there's also an option for a virtual background. As you see, many of us have a cyber seniors background, and you can choose a different background to have behind you instead of just seeing your room. So here you'll see all of the preloaded options, which, for example, is the bridge, the grass, outer space, and then a few different ones, the beach. And then there's also the option to have none that you can see there. And then if you look to the right, you can see a little plus button that would allow you to actually upload your own image or video. And by clicking on that, you would then be able to actually upload your own. So if you had a photo of something that you really like a garden or a beach or anything like that, you can just go through the process of just uploading it to Zoom, and then it'll show behind you. And make sure that either you have a device that's compatible with virtual backgrounds or the most updated version, or you can even use a green screen or just a blank, colorless, or not colorless, but a plain background hung up behind you so that it will just select your outline, and that would also allow you to have a virtual background. And then one more video setting is allowing yourself to mirror my video, which just changes the way that you see yourself on the screen. So heading back to the bottom bar of Zoom, there's also the option to choose a video filter, which is also a newer kind of thing that you can do on Zoom. And it's right beside virtual backgrounds. So if you selected virtual backgrounds, you can also get to video filters by clicking on video filters. Then you can choose different cool kind of things that change the way your screen looks. So you can put a hat on yourself. You can put a border around your screen, for example, the little white circles. And it's kind of just a fun thing to do. And you can maybe talk to friends having a cool filter or something like that, which is really cool. And there's a lot of different ones to choose from as well. And then the next section on the bottom bar that you see is security. And I already talked a bit about the different things that you can choose regarding the security in your meetings, including, but I think that Lorianne has a few more because of her updated version. So hers allows for hiding profile pictures, as well as locking the meeting, which I don't think I had the ability to do, which may also be different because she is the host. It just depends on which role you have in the meeting. You have different controls, but then you're also able to allow participants to share screen, chat, rename themselves, unmute themselves, and start their videos. So it just depends on what you're able to do, but you can look at the security section to see what you're able to choose for the participants. And then the participant section, you can access it by clicking on the little person icon, and there is the complete list of everybody that is currently in the meeting. And if you're a host, you can also see the waiting room as well. And you can even search up people's names if you're interested in that, to see if, say, your friend's in the meeting, or if you just want to see who's in the meeting as well. And then there's a few other options. There's the invite option that you see on the bottom, which is also how you would get people to join your meeting. And you can just choose who you send the link to. And because Lorianne is the host, she has the ability to mute all, which is good because then you can make sure that there's no noise during the presentation. And then there's also the more option, which allows a few different functions. You can ask all to unmute, lower all hands, mute all people upon entry, play, join, and leave sound if you want to know when people leave, lock the meeting, enable the waiting room, and then more about allowing participants. So a lot of these functions are just extra little things that you can change depending on what you want in your meeting. And it's just up to you, but you can play with what makes you comfortable, if you have a waiting room, if you want people to be muted, if you want their cameras off. You can really make very small, detailed decisions depending on what you want people to be able to do. And then the next portion of the top bar is the polling. So if you're the host, you can create polls by asking questions and then clicking on the launch poll button. So if you want to ask people questions or learn about the audience, then you can always just pose a question and then people will be prompted on their own screens to answer it. And then there's also the share screen, which allows you to choose different screens that you have open to share it to your entire meeting. And you can share, for instance, your entire window. You can share just one tab, or you can also share, if you turn on all the correct settings, then you can share what Lorianne is sharing and show the Zoom bar and then some of the participants as well. And then there's also the remote control, but then there's also the more section, which allows you to pause recording, stop recording, see meeting information, have closed captions, breakout rooms, hide video panels, hide floating meeting controls, optimize for video clips, live on Facebook, live on Workplace, and live on YouTube. So these are all just a few random things that you can do with Zoom. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up our presentation.